unsurprisingly, I suppose, the economy is going to be a pretty major issue in the election campaign. And so the first kind of question really centres on that. Asking you, well, we're coming up to the 40-year anniversary of the miners' strikes here in Wales, and obviously you've made reference to the kind of recent announcements about the steelworks in Port Talbot. And I guess the question is, in that context, how do you understand your party's plans to grow jobs and prosperity here in Wales and to combat the cost of living crisis? So really, we're going to start off talking about macroeconomics. And I'm going to ask you to kind of go in reverse order a little bit, and then we'll just have a chaired discussion thereafter, if that's okay. So Andrew, I'll ask you, again, you've kind of started talking about some of these issues, but that idea of Welsh jobs, Welsh growth, how's that going to come according to Plaid?
You know, it's not just, this year is not just the 40th anniversary of the miners' strike, it's also the 40th anniversary of my birth. I was born amongst the miners' strike, so I didn't know what my community was like before that. All I know is from what people told me and what I saw. My community was I wouldn't say a bustling community beforehand, but suddenly, as I was growing up, I noticed a lot of the shops were closed, weren't being filled. And what we're going to see again with the recent announcement of the Port Talbot Steelworks, 2,800 jobs lost. And of course, that will mean thousands and thousands of jobs in the supply chain. My partner worked in a shop in Port Talbot. And the last time, a few times ago when there was a threat to the Port Talbot Steelworks, she noticed that take-ins went down massively, and that's what we're going to see again. So how are we going to react to this? Well, the Welsh economy urgently needs investment. It needs investment in transport, in energy, in digital connectivity, and Plaid Cymru have called for a commission to reform the tax system in a progressive way to ensure that we can continue funding public services. And one thing that I'm glad to see Plaid Cymru frequently talk about is how we can maximise the spend that is already there. Public sector spends hundreds of millions of pounds each year, billions of pounds, sorry. And we want to look at how that money is being used to support Welsh businesses, Welsh jobs, Welsh communities. We want to also look at the welfare system and how that is supporting our communities. A third of children in Wales are living in poverty. So Plaid Cymru wants the welfare system devolved so that we can marry that up closer to, and I can see Carolyn shaking her head, so that we can closely marry that up with our policies on health, education, and local government. We do need to look at our universities, and I will sort of run down here, but our universities contribute enormously to the economy of Wales, but we are seeing some measures put in place, a hostile environment to international students that could risk funding for our universities.
Okay, and Carolyn?
Well, I suppose the elephant in the room is the fact that Labour's commitment to this £28 billion would appear to not be quite as what we thought it was originally. And the reason for that is that when we promised that back in 2021, borrowing was a lot lower, it was 1%. We couldn't afford to borrow the kind of money that we need to invest in this country. But we have still got a plan, and that plan is very much to invest in things like the steel industry. I mentioned earlier on that we pay in Tata Steel to export steel abroad. That doesn't mean to say that we're not going to be able to produce steel in this country. We want to invest to make sure that places like Port Talbot can thrive again. We would invest in a great British energy company. We're going to put £8.3 billion to actually make sure that we will create a publicly owned company that will create and store our own energy. We would be making sure that, I mean, one of the biggest issues today are women over 50 who are economically inactive because they've not had the support or the resource to keep them in work. And they're still not having the support and the resource to keep them in work. We will make sure that we invest in communities, we will invest in Wales, and we will promote the best in Wales. And we'll make sure that anyone with aspiration will have an opportunity to thrive.
Tom?
Thank you. A couple of things. Let me start with Tata Steel. Look, Port Talbot, part of my region, the Tata plant sits in my electoral region. I've met with Tata on a number of occasions prior to the announcement. And let me be really clear. If the UK government hadn't stepped in with that £500 million package, that steelworks would have closed entirely. That would have been 8,000 jobs that were here today and not here tomorrow. That was the difference. Now, the process by which steel is made means there are less jobs involved in that. And that is a huge blow to a town the size of Port Talbot. I totally get that. I totally understand that. But the choice was between those 8,000 jobs or the 2,800 jobs that we've lost. But it's how do you then mitigate against that? If you look at where we are and where we're going. So inflation now is coming down. The Prime Minister's plan to tackle inflation is working. That is the number one thing we can do to help people with the cost of living, to ensure prices are affordable and it's coming down. The government has taken the very lowest paid out of tax altogether. That's a very conservative commitment to ensure people are paying as the less amount of tax as possible. And I know we've got a budget coming up in the next couple of months, and I hope to see more work in that area. But it's how do we grow that economy going forward, particularly here in Wales? Well, the answer for me is really easy. We've got to invest in people, which we've already talked about that in some way, and we can go on to talk about education in this country and apprenticeships. We need to also invest in infrastructural projects, like, for example, the M4 Relief Road. So a number of you I know either live in South Wales and experience that regularly, or making that journey to come to Swansea in the first instance will know that that is a major block on our economy. And so it is not only how do we protect the economy we have today, how do we grow that economy for tomorrow, grow it in that green way that I talked about earlier, so that everybody can share in that prosperity and the public services have the funds they deserve.